So I want to now introduce our next speaker. This is the brilliant JJ Ainsworth, who's been doing a lot of research on symbolism over many years. She's from Arkansas in America. I met her back in 2015. We've been exploring together, researching together, and she spoke at the Megalithomania conference in 2018, also at Origins in 2019, and co-hosts many tours. She's a very sought after tour guide because she points out and sees things that no one else does. And she has this unique view on the ancient world. And I would like to welcome, again, back at the Origins conference, JJ Ainsworth. So please enjoy this wonderful lecture.
Hi, everybody. It's really nice to see you here. I'm JJ Ainsworth, and today I'm going to talk about the ancient goddess and some of her associated symbols. The Venus of Holt Bells is an Upper Paleolithic figurine made of mammoth ivory that was unearthed in 2008 in a cave in Germany. She is robust with focus on her breasts, buttocks, and vagina, all to do with fertility. She is dated to between 40,000 and 35,000 years old at the very beginning of the Upper Paleolithic, which is associated with the earliest presence of Cro-Magnon in Europe. In Paleolithic Russia, women were keepers of the hearth, providing warmth and life. These people often lived in pit huts, almost like small hypogeums or kivas, to help avoid the freezing temperatures. These Kostinki figures were found near hearths. They were small figurines of old women with sagging breasts from childbirth and age. Interestingly, vulvas were found shattered near the fires as well, further cementing women with the hearth. These women staked their claim as keepers of the sacred fire long ago, and this pattern carried on throughout time. The Venus of La Salle is a limestone bas relief of a nude woman. She was painted with red ochre, the color of the menstrual fluids, and she was carved into a rock shelter in southwestern France. The carving is associated with the Gravettian Upper Paleolithic culture dated at approximately 25,000 years ago. The Venus holds her crescent moon-shaped horn that is notched 13 times, which is the same amount of moons in a lunar year. Also, 13 is the day of the cycle when a woman can become pregnant. The ability to plan a pregnancy, especially during the cold and arduous journey of the Paleolithic, could mean the difference between life and death. To survive in the Paleolithic, women listened to their biological clocks and learned from them. Luckily, women are good teachers, and so shared this knowledge within their groups, and so it passed on and on, beginning the first schools, such as the one in Lascaux Cave. Lascaux is a network of caves near the village of Montignac in southwestern France. Over 600 paintings cover the interior walls and ceilings of the cave. The paintings represent large animals, local contemporary fauna, and astronomical observations. They are the combined effort of many generations, and the age, though disputed, is around 17,000 years. The archaeological record's earliest data relating to human awareness of the stars and heavens dates to the Aurignacian culture of Europe from 32,000 BC. Alexander Marshak published breakthrough research that documented the mathematical and astronomical knowledge in the late Upper Paleolithic cultures of Europe. Marshak deciphered sets of marks carved into animal bones, and occasionally on the walls of caves as records of the lunar cycle. These marks are sets of crescents or lines. Artisans carefully controlled line thickness so that a correlation with lunar phases would be easy to perceive. Sets of marks were often laid out in a serpentine pattern. The astronomer priestesses of these upper Paleolithic cultures understood mathematical sets and the interplay between the moon's annual cycle, ecliptic, solstice, and seasonal changes of the earth. Here are more of these notched calendars that many call Venus figurines, with obvious feminine attributes dating to almost 25,000 years ago. Although archaeologists sometimes label this as a simple Venus figurine from about 25,000 years ago, I believe it is something more than a simple figure. I believe it is a tool that has been around for a very, very long time. So let's talk about the Waz scepter. The scepter was a symbol that appeared often in relics, art, and hieroglyphics associated with the ancient Egyptian religion. The scepter appears as a stylized animal head at the top of a long, straight staff with a forked end. They were depicted as being carried by gods, pharaohs, and priests. It was a measurement tool often associated with land measurement relating to crops, and very later in time, it was also a symbol of power. It was part of the rod and the ring measuring kit. These tools of surveying and measurement gave humans the ability to successfully farm and sustain themselves, which effectively extended and improved their lives. If you had the knowledge of measurement, then you had power. And very, very early on, something happened there, and very early on, this power may have been with women. I think that Venus figure is part of an early surveying measurement tool, not just something to look at. Now I would like to talk about Göbekli Tepe. Why were the early temples built and by whom? It could be for many reasons, but let's discuss a few. When thinking of these megalithic temples, it makes complete sense to me that these immense structures would have been built to observe and preserve. However, this is not all these temples were. If you're building something grand that takes a lot of brute force and a lot of precious time, then you would have wanted to get as much use as you could for the effort. What I mean is these temple structures were multi-use sites. And when determining who could have envisioned and originated this type of architecture, I have only to look at myself. What I mean is that I am a woman and I see myself and other women in these temples. I look to the far distant past, where it was clear that the goddess was in everything, shown in the many ancient Venus figurines, with emphasis directed at the fertility aspects. And I see us. The cycle of the mother goddess was long-lasting and continued on even until up to 3,500 years ago, often hidden but always there. She persisted for a very long time, as powerful things generally do. But where is she at Göbekli Tepe? Again, I look to my body and I understand what the ancients may have been doing here. Many academics believe the site is patriarchal, or that it was the beginning of patrilineal cultures, male-dominated. I can't for the life of me see this. What I do see are many amazing, voluptuous earthen womb temples, fertile and thick, and inside these mounds are the abstract forms of humans that we have all pondered about, and the carvings. Well, they're stupendous, consisting of ferocious felines, powerful oryx, bulls, heavenly birds, snakes, venomous scorpions, boars, arachnids, and many other animals as well. It is very true that many of these animals on these abstract human forms are erect and full of male seminal energy. I believe they are there to play their role of impregnating Mother Earth for bountiful hunting, gathering, and possible agricultural harvests and animal domestications that may have just had their very first stirrings here at Göbekli Tepe. Many of these sites, and there are so many now, such as Göbekli Tepe, Karahan Tepe, Kortik Tepe, Asikli Tepe, and so on, were built of and in high places, hills both natural and artificial. They were built where the earth was swollen, and if she was not robust enough, the people contributed to her growth, bringing dirt and stone, higher and higher, creating even more pronounced protrusions jutting upwards from the earth. These temple locations look as if the earth herself has become pregnant, and with her mountainous swollen belly, she is ready to give birth and give rise to new life. Here is a famous figure from Göbekli Tepe showing a woman giving birth, a very obvious fertility emblem. She has the strangest of head shapes, not unlike a serpent. Scepters were also found here, and they are distinctly in the same shape as the head of the Göbekli Tepe woman. Serpents are firmly ensconced with the imagery of the woman for many reasons, including her umbilical cord and the soft, wavy patterns serpents create when traveling across land and water are often associated with the gentle movements of women. And the same type of female serpent pattern is found at Karahan Tepe, Navali Tori, and no doubt will be found in the future at similar sites. Bovine and bucranium at Göbekli Tepe is another common theme found. And in other earlier cultures, it is also ever present. The bovine is associated with hunting, string, shelter in the form of clothing, tools, and also relating to women, specifically to a woman's uterus and the structures accompanying it. It must be mentioned that the uterus is often represented in ancient times by the bucranium, just as they are here on this T-pillar. Here on the left is a Nana symbol. The rosette pictured with scorpions created about 5,300 years ago in Mesopotamia. In this case, the scorpion has the same role as the bucranium, and the rosette, the fallopian tube, similar to the ancient artifact on the upper right from Egypt portraying the goddess Bat in the form of bucranium and fallopian tubes. And the middle image is from the Samothrace culture, where we have the same symbolism of the bull or uterus with the flowering rosette as the fallopian tubes. It is said that the cult of the great gods on Samothrace was second only to the Eleusinian mysteries in importance in the Greek world. These female symbols persisted for millennium. It's also important to note that on the vulture stone from Göbekli Tepe, the scorpion is shown as well. Çatalhöyük was a large Neolithic settlement in southern Anatolia, which existed from approximately 7500 BC to 6400 BC and flourished around 7000 BC. It was full of symbols associated with the goddess, such as the auric and bull, which played a very important role in the lives of these people. These animals helped to sustain life in many different ways. I'm very interested in the animals depicted at Göbekli Tepe and other similar sites because they are often so curious. Here, the felines of Göbekli Tepe are as impressive and powerful as they are predatory. The middle image is an artifact found at Karahan Tepe, and it is a feline on the back of a human. What is going on here is up for debate, but this may symbolize some type of strange fertility ritual. The seated woman of Çatalhöyük is a baked clay nude female form. She is seated between feline-headed armrests, depicting a corpulent and fertile mother goddess in the process of giving birth while on her throne. Here she is the mistress of animals. She has tamed or domesticated them. This statuette is only one of several iconographically similar ones found at the site. She was a very important elite being. The culture at Çatalhöyük was obviously influenced by the much earlier Göbekli Tepe inhabitants, and you can see the evidence in their symbolism. A lasting legacy from the ancients. The pelts on these feline figures represented much more than just animal skin. These pelts and their symbolism continued descending towards the future, taking on other more obvious roles of the goddess involved in temple measuring and building, such as with the ancient goddess Seshat from Egypt, who was known as surveyor and mistress of the house of architects, among other things, wearing her leopard print dress. The spots on the pelts were associated to the stars in archaeoastronomy. The deity associated with the powerful feline had the ability to measure the heavens and earth. She was the great goddess, the creatrix, the beginning of civilized society. She was giving Promethean-like knowledge to the people of earth in the form of the sacred fire and measurement. She gave knowledge of time, architecture, craft, farming, and sedentary sustained life. The vultures appearing on Pillar 43 at Göbekli Tepe also show up at its descendant site of Çatalhöyük. They show identical iconography in the form of predatory birds near headless bodies, which is similar to excarnation rituals, sometimes called sky burials. Now, at the top of the vulture stone, Pillar 43, are three strange structures with multi-layered meanings. These objects appear to be three bags or perhaps baskets, maybe possible animal pens or earthen mounds, all different, but all the same, working in sync. Each having their place, the bag or basket used for collecting seeds for harvest, pens for early animal domestication as a source of food, and the mounds for the fertile and pregnant mother giving birth, all creating and contributing in unison with continuation of the life cycle. They are all one and the same. Looking closely at enclosure H on Pillar 57 at Göbekli Tepe, we see two serpents holding what may be a decapitated skull forming a sort of necklace. And below this is a clear vulva symbol, the magical pubic triangle. Let's compare Göbekli vulva to the very obvious vulvas from the Lipinski Vir culture located in Serbia. The latest data suggests that the chronology of Lipinski Vir spans between 9500 BC and 6000 BC. The site is situated on the banks of the Danube River. Lipinski Vir buildings have a layout which is based on elaborate geometry of an equilateral triangle grid and 60-degree circle sections in the form of the female genitals. These temples were the goddess herself. A sort of cult of the head was practiced at the site. Ritual burials included a strange practice of removing the skull from the head, then the mandible from the skull before they were all buried separately. Skulls were placed in special stone structures. The skull would be placed on a larger stone slab, then protected by crushed stones. The depictions of the vulva are strikingly similar. So I really cannot deny the possibility that the goddess was built into the temple in Höyük sites of ancient Anatolia, and she was being impregnated by the depicted animals within her. These volva or chevrons, as we might call them today, are found on other Tepelers and plaques from Göbekli Tepe. And they are prevalent on the vulture stone, along with an abundance of other animals and objects, all related to the goddess. All right, let's continue. On the island of Gozo in the Mediterranean is Gigantia, a megalithic Maltese temple complex from the Neolithic. These temples are the earliest of the megalithic temples of Malta and are older than the pyramids of Egypt. The temples are built in the body form of the goddess. Her full and voluptuous curves, easily seen from above, mimicking our own female human bodies. Her body is a biological clock, a keeper of time. At the spring and autumn equinoxes, and at the winter and summer solstices, the sun enters through her vulva, impregnating her. She is an astronomical calendar. The Maltese Tarshan temple is a favorite of mine, with the swirl pattern branching out in the form of an abstract tree of love, while also denoting water, beginnings and endings, all working together in the continuous cycle of nature. The artifacts with their H-shaped altars on Malta harken back to the ancestor site of Göbekli Tepe, with its temples portraying the famous H, depicted on the belt of the megalithic T-beams. Quite interesting. A clay statuette from the Tarshan Temple of Malta shows a female figure with one hand on her head, whilst the other is pointing to her genitalia. The swollen abdomen denotes pregnancy, and on the back are 9 incised lines, which are thought to represent the 9 months of pregnancy. Another timekeeping device. And the so-called fat ladies of Malta, this is not my term, this is a general term used in Malta to describe these artifacts. Well, there are a lot of these, and they have distinct ancestry from ancient Anatolia, particularly from Göbekli Tepe, where this fat lady holds a presumed skull between her hands. And from Çatalhöyük, where she was found buried in the earth as if she were Gaia herself, always curvy, round, and voluptuous like the fullest of moons. Malta also has abstract pillar people, and their bodies resemble the T-shapes of ancestor sites. Many of the same animals thought of as sacred are portrayed in Malta, and also they are sacred at the Göbekli site. The sacred animal pictured here in the lower right is the boar. Of course, these Maltese temples also portray the regeneration of new life with the sprouting plants erupting from one of the bags or baskets. The site of Karahan Tepe is amazing, and I was able to visit it before the excavations began. It's unbelievable to think I was walking on top of all these amazing structures. Well, this site is possibly contemporary with Göbekli Tepe. It is an extremely interesting site because it has features unlike Göbekli Tepe. For instance, the pit hypogeum type structure, which has a carved waterway leading from above into the structure. That's really curious to me. And there's the watcher of Karahan Tepe. In this pit hypogeum stands 11 phallic-like structures, and staring at them is, well, this guy on the left. Well, I find the similarities between the watcher of Karahan Tepe and the Lipinski Beer Adam sculpture really interesting. They both have very curious facial expressions, and both may have something to do with water. All right, let's continue. This Indus Valley plaque from 3200 BC depicts the same symbolism found at Göbekli Tepe on the vulture stone, pillar 43. It has the T shape of the abstract human form, the scorpion, and the headless body. Now, this is interesting because the symbolism definitely carried on and traveled far. And the headless body there below is quite a curiosity. Here we can see that the T shape has actually merged with the ancient plaques on the left and right, forming the head of the once headless bodies. The goddess is the T temple. And the goddess symbolism carried on throughout time, changing, transforming, but always having vestiges of her former self. The T-shaped symbols lingered and persisted, traveling and adapting with cultures across the world. Here, from Turkey, Peru, Egypt, Israel, USA, just everywhere. You can't get away from it. If you look, you will find this T shape associated with ancient gods across the world. These artifacts or stylized bags or baskets are the descendants of the great civilizations of ancient Anatolia. They show the exact same symbolism found at Göbekli Tepe, from the bulls to the serpents to the felines and the scorpions. These artifacts are but only a few of the many that exist from the Dural culture of ancient Iran, and they are over 5,000 years old. In my mind, I do not see these artifacts as just decorative, but emblems of the great achievements in measurement, surveying, and architecture from the past. These are carriers of the tools used to construct. The bottom right image are of measuring tools, including the chroma used by Seshat and her surveying kit. This bag or basket held the tools of the ancient elite surveyors. Here is Seshat, mistress of the House of Architects, with her surveying and measuring tools. The bottom left corner shows an ancient grommet in use. And please note, in the same image, 2 stakes are being hammered into the ground. Now please look at the large middle portrayal image of Seshat, and she also holds these 2 objects in her hands. As she was a scribe, I believe these objects are again dual imagery, showing both writing tools and measuring tools. She was very versatile. This is from an early archaic vase, 700 to 675 BC. The swastika or whorls are ancient symbols found in many cultures around the world, starting out from the goddess. And she portrays the goddess flanked by her female symbols. She is mistress of animals and creatrix. Clear imagery is shown of the vulva symbols, including the fish as the womb of the goddess. She is the descendant of the Tepe and Poyet people's influence over belief systems that were encoded with knowledge. She has the same symbols found in Göbekli Tepe, including the ducks pictured at the top of the slide, the bovine, the serpent, the birds, and she is flanked by her domesticated canines, just as the seated goddess of Çatalhöyük was flanked by her felines. Here is the ancient goddess Ishtar with her animals and her cubic triangle, following the patterns created millennia ago. And there's definitely archaeoastronomy at the sites with the alignments. And here on this souvenir plaque possibly shows constellations related to the ancient Anatolian sites. This one seems to relate to the scorpion. Well, in conclusion, I would describe Göbekli Tepe, Karahan Tepe, and the other sister sites as places where life force fuses. A celebration of energy, both male and female, generating renewal and accepting death as part of the natural life cycle. The sites are not just, in conclusion, I would describe Göbekli Tepe. So in conclusion, I would describe Göbekli Tepe, Karahan Tepe, and the other sister sites as places where life force fuses, a celebration of energy, both male and female, generating renewal and accepting death as part of the natural life cycle. The sites are not just male or female, but both equal together, working together towards regeneration. Thank you guys so much, and I hope you enjoy the lectures today, and I really appreciate you. And so I will see you later.
So JJ's going to be joining us right now. Aren't you, JJ? There she is. Brilliant, brilliant, fantastic. And so she's going to just unmute herself. Then I'll relay the questions over to.
Hello.
Hi. And okay, so let's have a look at this. So yeah, Vicky Tate asks, this is a question. Do you think the feline on the back of the human, I think you said it was at Karahan Tepe, could be depicting a shamanic experience?
Oh, definitely. No doubt about it. We find the same imagery around the world depicting the same type of experience. In fact, me and Hugh have been researching this with the Olmec culture in Mexico, which are completely wrapped around the feline as the center of their belief system. So I have no doubt that is what is going on. You're right.
And then we have another question here. There's an electrical universe presentation on the handbags or man bags that suggest they're an ancient historical phenomenon that is commemorated. There's a YouTube link, but obviously we can't look at that. But what do you make of that theory?
Well, I actually don't know about this theory, so I'm willing to learn. So I will definitely check out the link, because anything related to ancient symbols, the bags, which everybody's interested in, I will go and check out and see what it's about. So thank you for that.
All right, and Nick D asks, could the God self symbol or the God self icon also be a goddess symbol?
Well, I think that is very possible. We have to remember that around 3500 BC, things started to change to where the feminine was no longer as popular. It started to turn male oriented. And so a lot of these God self icons are male figures, but definitely I think that those relate to measuring systems, tools, elite that we find around the world. It could definitely be so. Yeah.
Okay, that's interesting. And Maeve Calvert, she says, brilliant, JJ, thanks. Do you think the Great Flood could be an allegory for Gaia's waters breaking prior to birth or rebirth?
Ooh, maybe. Of course, yes, it could be. That there are so many theories revolving around that and other myths, but yeah, it's definitely a good allegory for that. That there is no doubt what bigger birth would there be, the flood. So yeah, definitely.
Okay, good. And we've got more. There's more. One more at the moment. There might be another more coming in, but Carrie asked, when you mentioned Seshat, you said she was depicted in one stone carving, in a stone carving, as holding her tools for surveying, and for question mark, was it constellation measurement? What was she holding it for?
Well, she was holding tools of writing and tools of measurement and tools for architecture, surveying. She was very talented, multi-layered. We find this in the earliest of symbols, and we are more familiar with it as a male sort of issue. So you might, not realize that the building of temples had to first be laid out by a certain ritual with Seshat was involved in. So yes, she was one of the great surveyors, one of the great elite, just like in Malta, the Sansuna giantess that the temples are modeled after. She was actually a surveyor building the temples by dropping stones from her apron. So these are all just allegory stories, but actual, memories and portrayals of these great ancestors that we had that we just have to really dig into to learn about.
And she also asked one more follow-up to that in the chat box. So she says, so Sheshat is like a female Thoth. Is that correct?
But better.
So better than Thoth. How about that? She says, thank you, JJ. So that's all the official questions we've got. If anyone else has got a question, or Peter's jumped in here, Peter Tate. He asks, do you think the Egyptian Ankh is a representation of the female reproductive tract?
Well, I think that's been said before, but anytime you get these symbols that relate to the breath of life and life, you think of, creation of life, which comes from women mainly. So it could be, but it could also be the fusing of the circle symbol with the female and the phallic symbol of the male. I mean, it just we don't know. This is all speculation, just what you think, just theories. I'm sure other people are going to have a very different idea of it, but yeah, it could be. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. And that appears to be all the questions for now. I'm just seeing if anyone else is going to jump in. Okay, well, I've got a question, JJ. So what we're planning on going to Karahan Tepe. We're going to go and explore many of these so-called Tas Tepeler sites that we're all very interested in. There's a lot of discoveries being made. Do you think do you think that with the discoveries being made and more and what hasn't been unearthed yet, it's going to prove this theory that there's like a very strong kind of mother goddess or, goddess kind of cult taking place there? Do you think that's the origins of Göbekli Tepe and Karahan Tepe? Do you think that's kind of like where the idea sprang from to build these sites?
Well, definitely I do. And I think we will find it more of these sites that we unearth related to not only Karahan Tepe, but if we look to the past, to these places where woman was powerful, we will see that it just leads us into this Göbekli Tepe area, Karahan. So yeah, there is no doubt the magical woman that could create life and do so many other things. There is no doubt in my mind that she played a huge part in all of these structures.
It's just so obvious with the shape of the temples in Malta and Gozo. It's like, and a lot of academics and researchers don't even see that or think about that. They just sort of ignore that, and but it's clearly there, and yeah, fascinating. So all right, well, thank you, JJ. Really appreciate your time. Thanks for taking the time to put this together. Some really in deep research. And for anyone who doesn't know, JJ has got a brilliant YouTube channel. You can just search for Megalithic Maiden.